Good morning, happy Wednesday. Welcome to Counterpoints. All right, so today we are excited to announce the Friday edition of our show, thanks to the support of Breaking Point's viewers, listeners, and premium subscribers.
Every Friday, you can expect to see us actually right here, but with a slightly different format. We're excited to be hosting long-form debates, interviews, and all that good stuff starting this Friday, actually.
And it's not going to be like Crossfire. It's not going to be a point-scoring thing. We're not going to be trying to make people look stupid. Although if somebody is stupid, we're going to...
They're welcome to look stupid.
They're welcome to look stupid.
We're not going to prevent people from looking stupid.
Right, but we're not going to try to do it on purpose. It's not going to be a kind of partisan back and forth. It's going to be more of an effort to kind of shed light rather than heat, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I think that's a good way to put it. And like find the contrast, figure out where it actually is, get rid of those traps that keep us outraged but poorly informed.
Yes.
Well, like many of you, Ryan and I want to see people that we agree with and people that we disagree with actually just kind of talk it out. Sometimes we'll grill those people ourselves. Other times we'll facilitate debates between different, maybe elected officials, other journalists, and thought leaders. So that's the plan.
And we're grateful to Crystal and Sagar for continuing to build this network. Grateful to all of you for continuing to make it a profitable enterprise, or maybe a profitable enterprise eventually.
Ryan is ever the capitalist.
That's right. And it's what enables us to do this show.
Premium subscribers will get every edition of the Friday show straight to their inbox early, so you can head on over to breakingpoints.com if you'd like to join us for that. We appreciate almost 2 years now of support from the Breaking Points community, feedback, friendship from everyone. It's been awesome. And
with that, we'll leave you with a tease. We've got a big guest for Friday.
Yeah.
I don't want to play him up too much. I think you're going to kind of laugh when you see it, but also, I think you'll enjay it.
I think it'll be a really good conversation. I'm actually very excited about it.
It might be a little bit of a spit take. Like, really? This what you got? It'll be kind of funny. It'll be a good conversation.
Now, last night.
Yes.
Huge deal passed the Senate. We're going to break down all of that. We're going to talk about some updates out of the Middle East. We're going to talk about Lina Khan and the FTC voting to ban non-compete clauses. Ryan, you've got an interesting story for us, and we have a great guest from Colombia.
And Emily, last night in the Senate, billions of dollars more for 3 war theaters, Ukraine, Israel, and also China. China just keeps getting kind of smuggled into this conversation. Like, oh yeah, if we're gonna spend tens of billions of dollars on war, let's make sure we're beefing up for World War III in that region as well. So what did you make of Congress finally, after months of hemming and hawing, doing what kind of everybody expected that they would do and fund more war?
Yeah, no, I would say, so we can put this next element up on the screen. There was overwhelming support for this bill.
It's like, how did this take a year?
Right, yeah. No, it's amazing, actually. Maybe that's the real accomplishment of the Freedom Caucus, is that they delayed this for a year. Now, there is a pretty impressive list, I would say, of Republicans who voted against this bill, even including people who have traditionally been kind of hawkish, like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. When you lose Ted Cruz on an Israel bill, that's really saying something. Yeah. And actually, on that note, we can put the next element up on the screen. This is what's in the bill, the final bill that was passed. So it's $60 billion for Ukraine. $15 billion of that will include facilitating weapons sales. $15 billion of that is for training and intelligence, military training and intelligence. $8 billion is going to go to the Ukrainian government operations. $1.6 billion allocated to the private sector. $14 billion for Israel, $8 billion for roughly the China theater. So that's kind of how the numbers break down and what was actually passed last night.
And no money in there for defense attorneys at The Hague, but maybe there'll be some pro bono help from the U.S.
I'm pretty sure they always have money for that.
Yeah,
there's always money in the banana stand. Yeah.
Yes. So take them one by one. Ted Cruz is a politician's politician. They're all politicians, but Ted Cruz is the one that I like to watch in the Senate to get a sense of, how, which way the winds are blowing in the political movement, because he really has his kind of finger on the pulse of the grassroots. And to see Ted Cruz come out and vote no on a war spending package that includes billions of dollars for Israel, just days after the Iran attack, which Israel believed was going to really help grease this package through, and it did actually help grease this package through, suggests that there's something bubbling within the kind of Republican caucus that has gotten to the surface, if Ted Cruz is feeling the heat of it. Is that an accurate read? You know, I trust your judgment on the internal Republican politics more than my own.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely an accurate read. You know, it's the...
And what is it? It's Ukraine?
It's
Ukraine overriding
the
and
border.
isolationism overriding?
It's the border.
The border.
It's the border. It's because this didn't include a dime for the border. And people will say...
Wouldn't have guessed that.
People will say, well, you know, what do you mean? There was that deal, that bipartisan compromise deal that was brokered. My opinion on that bill is that it was intentionally designed to, and there are a lot of exemptions in it. We could debate it. We debated it at the time, and I think Crystal and Sagar debated it at the time too. There were a lot of exemptions written into the bill that would have basically maintained presidential power, that you could sort of carve out some of the small concessions Democrats made on asylum and all of that. But the point is, Republicans were furious with McConnell.
So they wanted the border money in there.
Yes.
And if they didn't get the border money in there,
yes,
Israel doesn't get any money.
And so the media is looking at this and saying, well, like Mitch McConnell brokered a deal with Chuck Schumer and James Lankford. And Republicans are like, well, we never supported that deal. We never would have supported that deal. And so because they got so screwed by leadership on the House side, that Mike Johnson said that over and over and over again, that you can't have a dime more for Ukraine until you do something serious about the border. And he basically flip-flopped on it. And again, like what was going to happen, probably this was always the inevitable result. But Republicans felt like they didn't even fight. And then on top of that, it is the kind of Ukraine, I don't want to call it isolationism because now we're how many years into the war, and people like Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and most Republicans actually were initially pretty supportive of the war effort. It's just the Biden administration prosecution of the policy coupled with no border support, basically.
And this is what they call in Congress a free vote, because whenever it's this overwhelming, like the outcome is already determined. Like, no matter how Ted Cruz votes, the bill is going to pass. So that means it is a pure political calculation. Like, where does he want his name to appear on the yay or the nay column? And so that goes to, how is this going to look back home now? How is this going to look in presidential primaries in the future? And clearly, he made the calculation. A no vote is the winner here. Mitch McConnell, meanwhile, kind of doing a victory lap or a dance on Tucker Carlson's head here. So really kind of interesting comments from Mitch McConnell afterwards. Let's roll him on Tucker Carlson.
The demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which was interviewing Vladimir Putin. And so he had an enormous audience, which convinced a lot of rank-and-file Republicans that maybe this was a mistake.
How dare you interview foreign leaders?
Yeah, I mean, set aside whatever you think of Tucker Carlson, the idea that you can't interview a foreign leader, even a dictator, is utterly absurd. But what's interesting about that clip is that's what passes for emotion from Mitch McConnell. There may be no stronger supporter of the war supporting the war in Ukraine than Mitch McConnell. His ability to move money to Ukraine through the lame duck was one of the biggest gifts to the Ukrainian war effort. And he put all of the capital that he had remaining into it. And people have talked about it as really one of the only things he has really ever believed in, other than opening up campaign finance laws. Like that, like it's that plus the Ukraine war. And we don't need to get into the psychology of why that is or what happened. It just is. And he and Kevin McCarthy, teaming up with Democrats who are almost unanimously supportive of it, have been able to muscle through all of this support. But I found it really interesting that he pinpoints Tucker Carlson as kind of the problem, that the problem with inside the Republican coalition, that that produced this opposition internally.
And the implication of that, by the way, is that his own voters who disagree with him on this are so stupid they just mindlessly follow Tucker Carlson.
Bamboozled by this bow tie guy.
Exactly. Not that they found...
Doesn't even wear bow ties anymore.
They're intelligent. No, he doesn't. They're intelligent people who maybe found an alternative argument compelling. And it's hardly just Tucker Carlson. It's never just been Tucker Carlson. There have been plenty of other people Mitch McConnell would complain about. It's not as though Tucker Carlson is like the origin of what McConnell sees as this cancer spreading throughout the country, because to your point, even Ted Cruz, this is Cruz on Fox. I pulled this up after you mentioned it, Ryan. He said, "I'm going to vote no on Fox, but I will tell you this is a very close call. And I struggled for a long time without a vote because there are elements of this bill I really, really strongly support. This has military aid for Israel. Israel is in the middle of a war. We should have provided this emergency military aid, but I can't support this bill ultimately because it gives money to Gaza. It gives money for the NGOs that are trafficking illegal immigrants, and it does nothing, zero, to stop the invasion at our southern border." That's got to be the priority. If you're listening to this, Ryan just put his head in his hands and just seemed to sigh in exasperation.
So Ted Cruz, with more than 2 million people facing starvation, voted against the bill, not because it was sending weapons to the people who are organizing that starvation, but because it also sent food and water and humanitarian relief supplies to the people in Gaza, which he claims is somehow connected to a train of trafficking to the border.
Well, and notice he mentioned, the NGOs, it's a lot of the things throughout Central America, like those groups
he's saying that
he's taking issue with.
And right, he's saying that like Hamas is like trafficking people to the border and they're going to use this like money.
Oh, no, I think he's talking about like the various aid groups, whether it's like things that are being funded by USAID.
He thinks UNRWA is a Hamas front, for instance.
Well, but also the stuff in, like the Darien Gap, some of those groups, not so much that they're facilitating, although he objects to this too, I'm sure, facilitating terrorists coming up or using the border.
How he connects that to Gaza is...
But I think he's talking about like the Catholic charities or whatever that incentivize, and they are funded by the UN. They are, I don't know exactly about this bill, but I think that's what he's objecting to, just the broader question of those NGOs facilitating people coming in. And actually, we've written at the Federalist about some of those groups that are like explicitly evangelical and Catholic, and they basically help people get through the Darien Gap. Like, here, you might die, but clearly you're going to do it anyway, so we'll be here to help out. You and I probably disagree on that.
But no,
I think that's what he's talking about.
We may or may not, but like to connect that to humanitarian relief organizations in Gaza, to me is... It makes it almost impossible to even like have any kind of non-psychedelic conversation about the situation. It's like there is a genocide going on. There are like hundreds of thousands of people at immediate risk of famine, millions at risk of starvation. Israel's blockading relief efforts from getting in. And this has some peanuts for the people who are suffering through that. And Cruz connects it to the aid organizations that he objects to the activities in the Darien Gap and the way that they're incentivizing migrants, which, like, to me...
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, Tom Cotton did not. He supported the bill. Katie Britt supported the bill. $95 billion in total, by the way. We haven't even mentioned that it includes the TikTok divestment, or the package includes the TikTok divestment. So Peter Welch...
Extended it to a year, so your TikTok's okay for at least a year.
I mean, it will likely always be okay. It'll just come under different owners because they know they can make a ton of money off of this, and that's how it'll go.
They might screw it up. Like, Chairman Xi's doing a good job with it so far, right?
Even better.
I mean, it's too addictive.
China, where the kids are like eating their vegetables on Douyin. And
what I think the compromise should be that the Chinese regulate social media for our children. Because we have a collective action problem here as a parent of kids. Like, when everybody else's kids is able to see YouTube and is able to be on like this or that, like it's asking too much to say that each individual parent needs to solve that.
Right.
You need a collective solution. What's Chairman Xi's rule over there? You get like 1 hour on Friday of video games, 1 hour on Saturday of video games, and then that's for everybody.
It's
all
blocked
the kids
out for kids. Yeah,
right.
It's
and so the kids then
out.
are not like complaining and throwing a temper tantrum, and the parents being like, all right, fine, just leave me alone. So that should be the compromise. Let she manage our kids' access to social media, and then
maybe that's the political speech, but
then they can also apparently they can also do the social media apps like TikTok, because apparently they're better at it than our people are. Like, we can't win without just passing a law banning their stuff.
The list of people who voted no, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. At one point in the list on the Washington Post website, it goes Jeff Merkley, Marco Rubio, Bernie Sanders, Eric Schmidt. I mean, it's just a really interesting coalition of people. And again, they're finding different reasons to disagree with the bill. So, for example, Ted Cruz cited first. The first thing he cited was the Israel problems that he had with the bill that we just talked about, but then went into the border. I think for a lot of these guys, they would first and foremost say it was the lack of border funding. Some of them might have objected to, in fact, the TikTok divestment. But overall, when you find Bernie Sanders and Marco Rubio together against, this huge, what was the final vote was 79 in support, 18 against. And so 3 didn't vote. 2 of them came out against the bill. 1 of them came out for the bill. That's Tim Scott. Rand Paul and Tommy Tuberville were against the package. They didn't vote because it was, like you said, a free vote. So if you're fundraising or whatever, I don't agree with it, but that's what they do.
Well, and it's easier than to tell groups like, oh, I would have voted your way.
I would have scored you.
Yeah. And to say, like, I would have, if he's meeting with a pro-Israel group, you can say, yeah, I would have voted for that money. If he's meeting with a border group, you could say, yeah, I was going to vote against that. Like,
Right.
Members of Congress are known to do that, but
Sometimes they score you, and it goes into your score.
So you're like, yeah. So then, but putting all of these things together in one bill is just one more way of kind of abstracting politics away from people. Like, because if everybody was forced to vote yes or no on TikTok, yes or no on Ukraine, yes or no on money for a war with China, yes or no on money for the war, for Israel's war, like, then when they run for re-election, people will know, oh, they voted yes on this, they voted no on that, here's who I support. So it's a little bit more representative democracy. When you put everything in there together and just ask people to do one giant yes or no, it's just one more effort to confuse people and to kind of separate the idea of accountability and representation.
That is such a good point, and it was one of the conditions, actually.
The Freedom Caucus wanted like single issue votes. I was for them on that.
Single issue votes, and that was part of their deal in the rules package with Kevin McCarthy, and it has not turned out that way at all. And Mike Johnson, of course, is somebody who's always been, he said many times, we shouldn't govern by omnibus.
Right.
And we shouldn't govern by omnibus precisely because of this. It was the only way, and they knew this, and Mike Johnson knew this, the only way that Mike Johnson was going to get the money for Israel, he figured this out it was pretty quickly apparent to him after he took the job. The only way that they were going to be able to get money allocated to Israel was to tie it. And Mitch McConnell, same thing. The only reason they were going to get money that was going to go to Ukraine was to tie it to Israel. And for Johnson, he just realized he couldn't attach meaningful border security to it in the way that the rest of his conference wanted, because there was nothing that you could do in the Senate. And so he said, this is more important. Israel aid's more important. He flip-flopped on Ukraine aid. It's another thing he said he wouldn't do without border security. And here we are, because when you combine them all together, it's the only way that you can build coalitions instead of having people forced to be courageous and vote up and down on individual items. It's not a good thing. It's not a healthy thing.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.